Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, March 8th, 2010. We are tonight we're working on a committee of the whole meeting regarding the budget. I'd ask everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wow, that was it's a good thing we're not a choir. To make this meeting official, I'd ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Gutenkopf.
Here.
Hesse.
Here.
Shea.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Nybo.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Morley.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
14 present, 0 absent.
14 present, 0 absent. We have an official quorum. And before we go on to our item number 2, which is the budget review process for 2010-2011, I would just like to state that ideally our goal is to try and get out of here about 10 o'clock tonight. And I know Mr. Streichert has to be out of here early, so we want to try and move this along as quickly as possible, even though this is time-consuming. We want to make sure to kind of set the agenda with time so we can be efficient here. So, but with that, City Manager Borchert, you can take it away, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. We're pleased to begin the working committee of the whole budget workshops with the City Council relative to the 10-11 budget. For many of the council, this is a first experience actually going through the budget review. From where you're at, I know you can observe that the city staff is here much more in force than is typical on a regular first, third city council meeting, or even on a second, fourth committee meeting night. The budget is prepared with input from the entire community, from the city council, and as it's being developed then from the operations perspective with all of the city staff, and all of the departments spend a lot of time in preparing the budget document and then are here to assist in the presentation of that budget and in answering any questions that you might have. As we prepared the budget this year, in the preparation of that, Chief Kopp was an acting assistant manager. Now he is assistant manager, and his perspective as a new lead in the manager's office provided a new perspective on the city's budget committee in preparing the budget. Chief Kopp will be assisting in a little higher profile than he has in the past in that regard, and he's already assisted in a different perspective in the preparation of the budget with the innovation and the creativity that comes with a fresh perspective. So we bring that information to you for your understanding. Just some final strategic remarks to complement perhaps the transmittal letter and the overview from last Monday night. The budget is, again, very marginally balanced. It provides a slight contribution to fund balance. Both the expenditures are an estimate, the revenues are an estimate. You'll hear a little bit more from Marilyn Gaston tonight as to the revenue estimates. If any of those revenue estimates cannot be achieved, provides a shortfall on the revenue side, which provides an imbalance on the budget side, which isn't good when you've got a very thin balance and no fund balance. From the budget officer perspective, I have to report that the mayor and council are in charge of policy. The city manager is budget officer, fiduciary lead agent on the finance side. We cannot tolerate any less of a fund balance than where we have it. So we need to self-impose upon ourselves on this budget that if there's a change on either the expenditure side or the revenue side, there needs to be an accompanying balancing change, because we cannot afford less money in the bank. We currently must review the accounts payable and the payroll to make sure that there's enough money in the bank for those checks to clear. Good news is property tax payments to the city will be received in a few months. That provides a significant push up on fund balances. But then we need to manage that through the rest of the 10-11 fiscal year to make sure that we don't slide to a deficit for the 10-11 budget year. So the good news, the budget is balanced. The good news is we've been able, from the perspective of maintain the ability of the city operating team to respond and serve the community. The budget does not require layoffs, reductions in staff beyond where we're at. It has deferred expenses and it has eliminated some services, but we're balanced and we're prepared for the revenue to start coming back and then be able to, with your direction, begin to prioritize those services or not. Simply put money in the bank as the revenue comes back. So with those kind of balanced, is that good news, is that bad news? I think it's good news. As the task force completed their work, there was a general direction, suggestion that 2/3 of the shortfall be solved with revenue and 1/3 with cuts. Since that date, the city's revenue has dropped off an additional $2 million. We've been able to balance the budget without readdressing the revenue side, limiting the revenue as it has been generally projected that you would implement the significant property tax adjustment, consider motor fuel tax, and consider service fees. All of the rest of that balance has been done on the side of reducing service that's not core, not critical, and not essential infrastructure, and then deferring where possible others to allow the operation to continue for the next fiscal year. More positive than negative. It is a serious, serious recession, and we're significantly better off than many other jurisdictions. Marilyn Gaston will go through the general fund summary, pages 84 to 104, in a general way, and you'll see we'll continue to repeat this. We'll make a staff report for you on these categories, and then certainly entertain any of your questions and use our team to respond. Mr. Stryker will be here all evening. He will not be able to be here the next couple of Mondays. That's why we would like to, wherever we're at on our agenda this evening, about 9:45, we'd like to take a timeout where we're at and go to Mr. Stryker on the utility fund so that he could report for you before he takes a vacation he's had planned. Marilyn.
I do just want to say a couple of things in a summary way. I'm not going to go through every page of that first section unless somebody has a question on a particular page. And some of this, as City Manager said, you've heard before. You might get tired of us hearing it, but it is so critical to our budget situation. I think it's worth saying again, and that's regarding our general fund revenues, that our estimate for the year that we are currently in, they are below budget overall. The projection for next year, for most of the major revenues, that they will be flat, and we're hoping that we'll at least get flat revenues. And the budget does contemplate some adjustments, some already approved by the council, such as the administrative toll and the wireless alarms, some still being contemplated by the council, and that would be our local motor fuel tax, rubbish charges, and in other funds, water and sewer increases and parking rate increases that have not been brought forward yet. In terms of the actual budget book, many of you know this budget book very well in terms of how it is set up. But there are, particularly for some of our new aldermen, there are some significant resources that you have to sort of dig in the back to find, and they would be, procedures, policies, and procedures that may be worthwhile looking at. Perhaps one of the more interesting, if a budget can be interesting, one interesting tab is the supplemental information. And on page 357 starts a number of charts regarding our major revenues. And it gives a lot of history, a narrative that will provide some history and where we are right now and how we actually budgeted those particular revenues, and then the historical information that may just give you a little perspective on where we've been and where we hope to be at least next year. One comment I will make, and I won't get into the detail, is on page 357. It's the property tax chart. So you can see on the very right-hand side, the increase in the very top part of that bar represents the debt service that we did not abate. So it's that part of the new part of the tax levy that our residents are going to see. And another thing in terms of resource, you'll find throughout the budget, we call them J forms, they're justification forms. So if any line item, however large, however small, if it is greater than 5% compared to last year's budget and $2,500, there will be a justification form with an explanation of why there is that increase. So you'll have hopefully that resource readily available. And that's it, unless there are any questions on those areas.
Any questions? Okay.
Then we will move forward to the next section, which are the expenditures for the administration and elected officials, the city manager's office. Pages 105 to 108 are the detail sheets there. I have asked the department heads to provide a brief overview of any changes and of anything significant that will not be provided in the budget. And in that regard, what I have to report is limited. On page 107, a couple of J forms that are basically for consultant fees and professional services. The consultant fee is part of the reinvention, if you will, of economic development in the city of Elmhurst. The planning, zoning, economic development staff has been basically laid off with the exception of the zoning administrator, creating significant savings. We are backfilling with consultants to a much lesser extent than what was laid off. That's in a limited area. Consultant fees in the manager's office to help. This is basically Mr. Bartels on the categories of economic development, fundraising for the museum, and additional communication services. The second line of $25,000 are professional services, not all of which have been identified yet. I would identify $1,000 to allow the city of Elmhurst to join the statewide consortium of communities and other organizations that are working towards raising the bar of public understanding of public pensions. It's basically a group initiated by the Northwest Municipal League, followed by the DuPage Mayor's Managers Conference, all of the councils of government, $1,000 a community to assist in that effort. There may be other areas of need for a consultant for the city as we march through this next fiscal year. You saw the newspaper article relative to the governor and the governor's position of taking from cities and villages to assist the state. If that gets any traction, it would have the potential of $1 million negative hit on the city of Elmhurst. Before that would occur, I think we would, as a city, wish to aggressively seek assistance in putting forth the city of Elmhurst's position in the General Assembly. So, other than that, the budget is as it has been in the past. Questions?
Alderman Brown, and that professional services, that was on what page again, City Manager Borchert?
Page 107 is the J form, and professional services are on page 105 under contractual
Gotcha.
services.
Got it. Okay.
Alderman Bram, I think, had a question.
Alderman Bram? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes, it actually, I didn't know that we were going to hit on the previous section, 84 to 104, so I had a few questions there. On page 85, which is pretty much the general fund summary of revenue and expenditures, I just want to highlight this, and as we have these budget discussions, maybe Marilyn or the appropriate city staff personnel could hit on it in more detail. If I look at the total in revenues for the proposed 10-11 year, it's approximately 41 million. If I look at the proposed expenditures, it's more than the revenue intake, being 46.5 million approximately. The point that I want to kind of highlight as we go through some of these sections is if you could, or the appropriate personnel, expand on the operating transfers in, which is where we make up the difference, and we're calling this a balanced budget per se, which is close to $6 million in operating transfers in. So I don't know if you want to do a quick check on that now or as we go through each section.
Well, the operating transfers in represents the transfers from the capital improvement fund to the general fund. And those primarily are for capital projects.
So that is 100% capital improvement fund transfer, or pretty close to it?
100%? Yeah, yes. The transfers out, the 403,000, is simply debt service. The debt service that the general fund is responsible for, it's transferred out to the debt service fund. But the 5.7 million is from the capital improvement fund.
Thank you.
Could I just follow up on that? Tom Trozine reminds me that on page 378, he does have a detailed schedule that provides the makeup of that 5.7 million.
Okay, that would be great. What was that page again?
Page 378.
Thank you. The other question I had in regards to this, the previous section being on page 91, under permits, line item 100, building. Pretty much in our lean years, the previous year, being this year, 09/10, we're estimating at close to 1.8 million, but we see a significant projected in 10-11 being only 760,000. Is this an accounting rule or something that I'm not aware of, or is this really the projection of being 1 million less than even last year?
In the 09-10 estimated column, the $1.8 million approximately includes the final payment for the hospital permit and also a large permit for the Park Place project down in the south side of town also.
Okay, but in previous years, I mean, I've never seen a number, from my recollection, below $1 million. Even if you look at 07, 08, 08, 09, it's always been above $1 million.
Yeah, the hospital permit was over a 3-year period, but prior to that, I mean, it was lower than $1 million. You know, like I said, I think it was $500 and some thousand a year for 3 years for the hospital itself. And again, we're not estimating any large projects as large in 10-11, and a reduction in the housing replacement also.
Thank you. And the last question on this page, page 91, being, and this is again revenues, line item, line up here, 3410600, which is police protection. In previous years, it's been 80+ thousand. Estimated in 09-10 is 92,000, and then projected for 10-11 is $30,000 left, being 62.9. Is this what we do for the school district, or?
Yeah, it'd be a Part 8 to supplement Mr. Trozine's answer on the permits. The city was dealing with inspection services of about 200 new houses a year, which had a permit fee of close to $10,000 a permit. And we anticipate this year to be 40 to maybe 50. So there's a huge drop-off in permit fee revenue. And on the police side, you'll hear a little bit deeper explanation from Chief Neubauer later this evening, but in the reallocation of critical and core services to provide staffing on the street with police patrol, after an extended analysis, it's our recommendation that that be maintained. There is a backing off of one of the 3 police liaison officers, which School District 205 would pay a percentage of that salary to the city of Elmhurst for. So rather than having 3 officers that are partially charged at about $40,000 an individual to the school district, there's only going to be 2 in that one of those officers has been reassigned and will be doing more general patrol duty. We've worked with the school district. School district understands how they will be protected, how they will have liaison officers, and if they have an issue, they get the whole cavalry in mass to respond. The chief has done more work with the officers to acquaint them with all of the school facilities, so officers will be familiar with the school district infrastructure if there's ever a call. So we've got, we believe, a good reinvention of how the city of Elmhurst provides police support service for the schools and for the broader community in this cutback mode. That's what the reduction is. Two liaison officers to the school district versus 3, which has been the most recent standard. It was 2, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, so we're back to the 3 or 4 years ago standard.
Does that correlate the same way? I don't see it if it does in regards to fire protection services, which is a little bit less as well in the revenue stream. A couple lines below, a few lines below.
Bensenville Fire Protection District, Yorkville Fire Protection District pay a contract fee to the city of Elmhurst. The Bensenville Fire Protection District referendum did not pass. We need to revisit that issue with the committee of the council and the Bensenville Fire Protection District Board. We're not anticipating getting all of what we believe would be appropriate based on that contract, and have therefore reduced that revenue.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to get back to the professional services line in the administration, because I know you specifically called out the $1,000 for the statewide consortium, but that still leaves about $24,000 that you must have some sense of what you're hoping to accomplish with that, even if you haven't specifically identified the key projects.
It could be to do a economic analysis of a neighborhood, an industrial park, or a commercial area that there would not be necessary funds in the Planning, Zoning, Economic Development Department to complete that economic analysis. It could be to pay an extra stipend to the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference for extra lobbying effort, or to the Illinois Municipal League for an extra lobbying effort in relationship to the near attack by the General Assembly and or the Governor's Office on municipal revenues, which we just believe from a staff perspective we need to be prepared for. We would hope that we wouldn't spend the money. It would then be a contribution to fund balance. But if it's not in the budget, it's not an opportunity for the staff to ask the council for authority to implement. So that second line is more of a contingency beyond the $1,000. I'm aware of the $1,000. Beyond that, it's might be good to have if we need it to support, again, the Municipal League, the Mayors and Managers Conference, ourselves, or even DuPage County relative to DuPage Water Commission. If you read the article in today's paper about the General Assembly perhaps taking the Water Commission and making it a component of the county.
Having recently been down to Springfield, it's challenging, and many mayors, including myself, are down there lobbying pension bills and lobbying a lot of the things that could hurt our municipalities. And so it also gives us some wiggle room. God forbid, we need to hire a lobbyist for the first time in a long time. We may need to do that. And I hate to go there, but that's something that, we may need to think about in the future. So,
Just to further clarify on that, in that line, there's about $6,000 to pay for court reporters that we need from time to time at a council meeting or at a public meeting, and also to a company that provides us with background checks for taxi cab drivers, which is required. So those costs also flow into that line.
I have a follow-up question.
Alderman Gutenkopf, yeah.
Have we had to shift other budget lines to account for the increase in this budget line? And if we have, where has it come from? So that we're not, looking at such an austere budget, have we shifted monies away from other areas within this administration budget to increase this particular line?
Probably refer to the last page in our,
Yeah, I think the page 140 and 141 is a lot of reductions. That's where we tried to provide the list in the aggregate.
I'm sorry, maybe I should be clearer. Have we shifted monies within this narrow unit of the budget? Have we moved things around within the administration budget to increase this particular line in the administration budget?
We think the answer is no to that.
Okay.
all righty, I'm sorry. Alderman Shea, I apologize. I was
Thank you,
looking
Mr. Mayor.
book myself.
Could you just explain something to me about the data processing? We have it in administration, planning and zoning, fire, police, public works, and the historical museum. They're all going up. I didn't know if, like one is going up from, let's see, on page 106, we've got it going up from 54,000 to 93, and also on page 137, we have it going up from 51,000 to 261,000. But it's data processing. I'm putting them all together, so I don't ask them in each category, but we have them in every one of these categories.
Yep.
They're all going up.
We would perhaps chat more detailed when we get to the IT category, item F on the agenda. But in a general way, the IT group has been cut back for the fiscal year we're in, 09-10. There's vacancies in 10-11. We're proposing, at least in the budget, that those positions are filled. We would, from a staff perspective, not fill those positions until the IT study, which the council authorized the last meeting, be completed, get that IT strategic report, understand it, tweak it, modify it. Ideally, something of it gets approved. We would then implement that. We would anticipate that there'll be, therefore, more IT dollars spent in 10-11 and then 11 and 12 than our most recent history has been. And we allocate IT as a service provider to other departments of the city. So IT is something that is operated out of the city hall area under Chief Kopp, Assistant Manager Kopp's oversight. But there'll be an allocation to the fire department, an allocation to the police department, an allocation to the utility fund. There'll be interdepartmental charges to take those services provided by IT and charge them to the proper areas of the budget. It doesn't make a huge difference in the general fund areas because it's all general fund, but for those charges that go into other funds, the parking fund or the utility fund, then those funds are properly paying for the service they're getting from the IT department.
Just to follow up,
Alderman Shea?
are we talking about adding on more employees?
Yes.
That's what we're,
Yeah,
so it's mainly
yes.
their salaries is what we're adding on to these.
There's a lot of capital in IT as well.
Okay. Good questions. Anybody else for discussion? Alderman Nabel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't understand what Alderman Shea just asked about on that line item, which is 9501. Why is that not detailed on the, I don't know what you guys refer to this as, the summary page for any increases, either a 5% variance?
The J form?
Is that what it's called?
Justification form?
Yeah, the justification form.
You know, on the allocations, the interdepartmental, you're right, we do not have a justification form because that really is just an allocation of the total costs in the IT budget. When we get to the IT budget, there will be justification forms for the increases that are in those areas.
Thanks.
So you're right, those are probably the only areas that we don't have. And I'll address another question that probably will come up. The central garage services, exactly the same concept. Our central garage department services almost every department, and you'll see that also 100% allocated out.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Alderman Brown.
Yeah, just to stick on this topic, so if I would add up everything under data processing from all the departments, then that would equate to what's in the IT?
Yes.
Thank you.
Doesn't call me. Because it's something to get out.
I don't plan on doing it.
Okay, just checking.
The next area would be Police Fire Commission, page 109. Pretty routine items here. No significant changes. Police Fire Commission got a statutory responsibility to be involved with the initial appointment of police officers, fire officers, and with the listing of eligibility for promotions. Get involved in certain disciplinary actions in certain circumstances. Finance, 110, 112.
Finance business as usual. The only thing that has changed, if you've been downstairs, you'll notice that the old finance counter has been closed. Operations have been combined with Public Works, combined actually between Finance, Public Works, and the Building Department, that operations have been allocated to those areas. So we've had reduction in staff, and then a combination of the rest of the staff to carry out the services. So I'll ask any questions, be happy to address them.
Anybody questions on this?
In finance.
If anybody's come in during the day, the multiple counters that we used to have, which I believe up to 4 or 5 at one time, are now down to 2. So we have we're cross-training staff, we're working with less heads, but we're getting the job done, and we're doing it at a savings. So it's the long and short of this. Any other questions? Okay.
Items E, F, G, and H are now the oversight responsibility of Assistant Manager Michael Kopp, and I'm so happy in that regard.
Now, page 113, 114, Human Resources. Human Resources supports organizations' mission through employee and labor relations. They also administer the loss and risk prevention, risk management, also facilitate and coordinate the city's wellness program, the wellness committee represented by all the departments, and they work in an effort to keep the city's workers productive and healthy both physically and mentally. If you look at the budget, you'll see 3052 professional services has been reduced over the years. In fact, if you look at the 06, 07, which is on here, was at 41,000. A big portion of that has been training dollars. You'll also see a slight increase in 6011 conferences, seminars, and training. And what we're an effort to keep our employees trained to the top level that we expect of them. We're going to try to do a system where we do more of train the trainer. We'll send a city staff person to this training rather than calling and having professional services come in. We'll send a staff member to the training and bring it back to the city staff, and we'll do training here with those people. Other than that, any questions on HR?
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you. This is about the employee relations line. I see that, and I know that we offer recognition of employees'
Milestone.
tenure, service. Can you just tell me how much we spend per employee? Because I'm looking ahead to next year, and either we've got an awful lot of employees next year who are going to receive service awards, in addition to this year, which is really wonderful that our employees are here so long. I'm curious as to how we budget per employee and how we make those decisions.
Well, the reason you'll see it go up for this year is because there's a lot of employees reaching milestones. But the $11, $12, $50,000, we put the employee recognition dinner back in that line item. This will be the third year we have not done that, so we're hoping that the economy will allow us to institute that program again.
And how much should we allocate per employee for service awards?
It's $10 per year.
They get an award every 5
Every
years.
5 years, yes.
And we budget $10 per year of their service, and then they get an award every 5 years. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Page 116, information technology. Again, IT is an internal customer service. They provide equipment, the computer data, voice technology, and also all the maintenance and repair of all the equipment throughout the city. As the city manager talked about, we did approve a proposal to have Northern Illinois' area of government affairs do a IT plan for us, and we should be starting that up real quick here. We're having our first meeting this week. If you look in the budget here, you'll see a large capital outlay, and those are some items that we've been deferring. Actually, it's the MDTs and the police cars, it's the PCs, desktop PCs, it's the laptops. Our plan is to have this money allocated. All those things we have pushed 1 year already. The MDTs for the police cars, we're hoping to get 1 more year of service agreement with Motorola. We're not sure if we're going to be able to do that or not yet, but if we can get that 1 year, we can possibly defer it another year. But the situation is now getting parts and be able to replace them. So that's where the larger, you'll see the larger amounts in IT this year is in that capital line item. Like I said, we don't plan on spending that money until we get this IT plan completed. It should be a 10 to 14 week is what the proposal is. 10 to 14 weeks we'll have an IT plan and then look at where we want to be strategically over the next 3 to 5 years and make those decisions at that time. But the money's in there to allow us to do that.
Alderman Brown.
Thank you. Just a couple questions, I think, on this section. On page 116, I know we've already brushed on the topic in regards to additional staff for IT. How many employees are we looking to increase this by? Is this 1, 2, 3?
Compared to what we had a year ago, it'd be 1. It'd be a project manager. That's been in the budget for, I think, 3 years now, and we just haven't filled that position. But over this last year, we have lost three people.
So the budget reflects an increase in 1 personnel?
Yes.
Okay. On page 117, and you already spoke to it, Assistant City Manager Cop. But I just wanted to dive a little bit deeper in regards to 8003, the computer equipment. And you discussed in regards to the MDTs, the mobile data terminals for the police department. I know back when I was in the Public Affairs and Safety Committee, there was discussion of the technology that would be used for that. Since the technology is just starting to roll out, being WiMAX, are these terminals compliant with that? Should we be holding off? I don't know if you know this or Mr. Trozine or Mike. Okay, and that's what I wanted to make sure of, not to bore people with technical details, but I saw people nodding off in the audience already. But what I wanted to make sure was we're not going ahead, moving forward with the MDTs, and then WiMAX is fully deployed, and then we have to redo half of the terminals that we got. Do we know dollar amount, what's allocated for MDTs and what's allocated for the rest of the computer?
240,000 for the MDTs.
240? Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Sounds like Mr. Stenson's on his ball back there too, so.
Oh, yeah.
Alderman Healy?
Question on 8098, increase in miscellaneous equipment. Note says it's to replace the AV in this chamber.
Yes.
I mean, how old is it? How old is it? Or is it breaking, or is this something to be pushed off?
It could be pushed. I mean, it's to the point now where, I know, was it last year the one went out, and it took us quite a while to get it repaired. It's becoming obsolete equipment. And so if it breaks, I don't know our ability to get it repaired again. I think that was the issue last time.
Yeah, currently the equipment in this room is about 10 years old. We've replaced both projectors, second set projectors, and then both screens were replaced. And then the current equipment in the podium, some of the equipment that we got, and it also includes the upgrade to the camera system to a high definition system for the AT&T contacts. And also high definition for our iPad.
Thank you.
Out of respect for our constituents too, we might want to get that wireless mic going, and we can pass that around as if, especially if Mr., any of the other staff members speak, we can make sure that they're heard on TV, but just as a heads up. Any, Alderman Pezza?
Thank you. In response to Alderman Healy, given that answer, it doesn't sound like this is something we urgently need. I'm not sure how this works, but how would we go about discussing whether or not this is worthy of putting off? Because the answer didn't seem like it was pertinent that this be done.
It's a good question, Alderman. I'll refer it to.
In many cases, at least, it would be this suggested that the budget plan, which this would provide the opportunity to replace, would stay in the budget, and certainly any item over $20,000 or any item that the city council would so tag or target to the city staff would not be spent until there was a committee review and a council consensus and direction to proceed. Absent the dollars in the budget, should there be an issue, a breakdown of equipment, there would not be a line in the budget to allow for a repair or a replacement, with the exception of the contingency line. In the past, the city actually dropped the contingency. This is a year where we have reestablished a contingency line of $100,000 because there are so many deferrals recommended. We anticipate we're just not going to be 100% lucky on all of those deferrals, and all of that equipment's going to last and not break down and be allowed to be deferred with expenditures to the following year. We would anticipate some would need to be dealt with this fiscal year, and perhaps that contingency line would need to be called upon to do that. Would be our recommendation that some items be allowed to be maintained in lines where we believe it's a higher probability there's going to be a need to either replace or repair. We'll review, in this case, am I right, Mr. Stenson, this is going to be more than $20,000?
Yes.
It would be more than $20,000. We would need to receive bids, review it with a committee and a council, and really we'll get another staff review and council review whether before those dollars would be spent. I don't know if that's a completely understood answer. I don't know if I did justice to it. We would recommend that this stay in the budget, understanding that it may not be spent, only be spent if we believe that it needs to be spent. We wouldn't even bring it to the committee and council without believing that it needed to be spent. And the council could say, thank you very much, but we disagree, defer.
Very good. Good questions, though. We'll get an idea of how the process works, especially for the new folks that are up here. Anybody else for discussion?
Planning zoning, page 119. Some of the highlights on this line item, you'll see on the full-time salaries is dropped by 2 people. Also in the 910 had lost a part-time person also, but we're looking at helping back up our zoning administrator with an intern. That's what the part-time salary is. You'll see at 3012 consulting fees, you'll see that's gone up, and that is because the allotment of the consultants we're using now for the economic development portion. There's parts of Mr. Van Slyke, Mr. Bartels, and the Fines All consulting, which it will be on the agenda for Monday night on the city council meeting. And you'll see at 3052 professional services, up to $40,000, and that is allowed money in there for a Shop Elmhurst campaign and a TIF study if the council desires to do so as we move forward with our strategic economic plan, economic development plan.
Very good. So the expected cost from consulting, especially with this retail recruiter, is all included in here. And Alderman Gutenkopf, Alderman Brown, and then...
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of the services that we're proposing under the consultant fees and professional services seem to me that they're duplicative of services already offered by other organizations within our community. Can you tell me how for example, the Shop Elmhurst campaign is going to be different from what the Chamber of Commerce is already doing, and why we would want to spend city funds for the, I mean, I understand the philosophical reason why we might want to promote a Shop Elmhurst campaign, but how is this fundamentally different from what the Chamber of Commerce is doing?
It's not going to be totally different. Actually, it's hoping to be partnerships with the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Alliance.
So are we funding a Chamber of Commerce enterprise with this money? How do you envision this is going to help support them?
Possibly through a grant for the Chamber of Commerce and Business Alliance.
So this would be similar to public-private. We're using multiple entities within our community to work together to maximize total benefit.
Alderman Gutenkopf is correct that the Chamber has initiated a very low-profile Shop Elmhurst. I think they would continue that without any help from the city. This would at least envision a much more aggressive effort that would not be recommended if there wasn't the ability to project that with the investment there'd be more than an equal return. And potentially the Chamber of Commerce would be part of the deployment of that effort in some fashion. Details yet to be determined. They haven't all been identified.
Can I follow up?
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of probe this a little bit, because I always am concerned that when it doesn't sound like we've really had the opportunity to flesh out the program, how we come up with the budget dollars. And I guess I'm feeling this way in response to any increase in such a difficult environment when we have an organization that has been launching this campaign. How does this trigger some of their efforts? Why is it our role to be punching up something that, you've admitted that they're doing something kind of low-key? Are there other ways that we can get them to initiate a stronger campaign, but yet not necessarily fund it for them? What does this funding end up doing? Is it going to buy marketing materials that they can't buy?
Our early understanding is, and visioning is, it is a more aggressive marketing effort and marketing program. Our analysis, very preliminary, of similar campaigns in other jurisdictions. The local government has provided grants to the chamber or a similar commerce support agency within the community. There's been some collaboration. So this would provide for that opportunity. Should there be an enterprise suggested that would be worthy of going forward, it would need to be, again, reviewed by a committee and then recommended to council before it would be implemented.
Did the chamber approach us about this initially? Is that why we've looked at putting this in the budget, or is this something that staff identified as other communities are doing, so we thought we might like to do it as well?
I'm not sure where the first thought was. There's a Hinsdale program, is it called the 53 Ways, 350, that was looked at, where Hinsdale is contracting with their chamber for the marketing of that effort. I believe there's a program in Glen Ellen. And out of the Economic Development Alliance was the discussion of, especially in this down economic time, it might be an appropriate effort to do an educational campaign and a marketing campaign, and if what's referred to by the economic development community, sales tax leakage, there's going to be sales tax leakage in any community as residents leave that community, go outside the community and buy items outside the community. As they do that, they're contributing sales tax to another community, which is there by leaking out of the Elmhurst community. This would be an effort to reduce the sales tax leakage out of the Elmhurst community by encouraging through marketing and education and bringing to the attention of the Elmhurst community the wonderful retail store purchasing opportunities that exist in this community, that folks make a conscientious decision to buy in Elmhurst if at all possible. Sales tax leakage, if it went down 5%, 10%, 15%, would have incredible, significant positive impacts on the city of Elmhurst's sales tax receipts. There was an economic development group, the Elmhurst Economic newspaper articles, Economic Edge article talked about the sales tax contributions from a family, and if folks would increase their purchasing in the Elmhurst community, the positive impacts of that. We're going to be redistributing that article in additional free press articles, and I think it'll be in a future economic story in a front porch to further make the point. So we're doing what we can at a low price, but perhaps there would be some return on an investment of taking it up to a significant higher level.
Very good. Alderman Brown, I'm going to go to Alderman Mulliner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only question really in this section is, I see that we were able to save some monies in regards to having consultants compared to employees, so that was good. But when I look at the bottom line, the 09010 on page 120, in regards to the expenditures for this area, we're actually going up almost $27,000. So I'm a little bit confused. We save money in the using consultant arena, but I hate to see in these economic times any one department to go up, even though it's only slight in this case in general. But could you explain, or someone explain, why we are going up in this department?
What are you talking about?
I think it's, if you look back at the 910 budgeted amount was $579,000. The 910 estimate is $473,000. That's because of loss of positions. And so if you look at it, we're actually going down almost $80,000 from the $579 to $498. Because we're putting a consultant.
If you're looking budgeted to budgeted, correct?
That's because we lost personnel and didn't account for the consulting yet. And so when you do the offset between the two, a fully loaded budget with the full-time people at $579, and now we're projecting $498 with the consultants in there also.
Because they'll be here for the full year?
Oh yeah, too, yeah, the data processing too. It went up because of the increase in the IT budget. So that's $40,000 right there too.
Okay, thank you.
And just to note, in 07, 08, we were at almost $750,000 in that area, and we're dropping that below $500,000. So it's almost $250,000 savings between 07 and 08 and in 2010, 2011. And that's even considering some, looks like a little pot of marketing dollars to help promote the town and get sales tax going again. So I think we're using our resources in a variety of ways to hopefully give us a better team and better vehicles to make the bell ring. City Manager Borchert.
I would just like to highlight the first line in the planning zoning budget, full-time. You'll see projected 1011, basically one employee. Second year, there's an increase. It's just not good planning to not have a regular secondary position, and our zoning administrator said he's feeling really good, and he's good to go for the 10-11 year, and we're counting on him. But in 11-12, hopefully the economy will return to the point where we'll be able to really do a second position. There's a lot of work that could be done, should be done. We can defer it for a year, but at some point we really need to, as an organization, have a backup for that individual. It's a key position. Staff's the Zoning and Planning Commission. They do a lot of very critical work, and we've got a plan if that individual is not able to provide services with existing staff, but on a regular basis we should get a backup, and that's projected to be put into play in 11-12 if at all possible.
Good. We thank Mr. Warner for keeping himself in shape and for the wellness program that Mr. Kapp has got to keep our employees healthy. And we're working as lean as we can, but trying to work as productive as possible as well. So Alderman Molnar, and I'll go to Alderman Pezza. Okay.
Could you take a minute and just highlight the changes in personnel from the 07 all the way through the 2010 year that we're looking at? I mean, we have a significant drop. How many people have we actually eliminated from that department over that period of time as the resources have been lacking?
Been 2 full-time and 1 part-time. That's what we...
And Alderman Pezza, do you have a question too?
Yes, thanks. Back to page 119, talking about the consultant fees. Once again, it looks like about an $80,000 increase over 910. And you mentioned the fines all, which was on our agenda, which was removed. So I guess that's, and I recall that was about 45,000 worth, so that's probably half of what the budget increase is. A couple of concerns. I know we don't just have the chamber, as Alderman Gutenkopf referred to, doing a lot of these services. I mean, we've got the City Center, we've got Marlene Tegmeyer, we've got Mr. Bartels, we've got Mr. Van Slyke, a lot of really capable people that are doing these jobs already. And I'm just thinking, we budget for it, which then, to me, means when it comes time to do it, it's an automatic yes, because we say it's there, why not? I'm a little uncomfortable with that much of an increase for what I believe. We've got a lot of this going on already. I think the people we've got out there already are really working hard, doing a great job. I think that amount seems to be a bit high, especially when we're trying in that department to make ends meet, and we already got rid of a couple of positions. Where's the rest of, if the 45,000 is supposed to be for fines all, where's the rest in the consulting fees?
The consulting fees are separated through different areas depending on what the consultant's doing. So that $114,000 has money in it for part of Mr. Van Slyke's salary, part of Mr. Bartel's contract, and part of fines all. It's not all fines all. Fines all also
right.
taken from other funds. So is Van Slyke and Bartel's.
So we're already including that, and we didn't even hire them or approve them yet, but we're already including it in the budget. Is that basically
correct.
the case?
and they should be on the agenda for Monday night. This is starting for May 1st budget. I mean, we're looking at from the economic development, I just feel that Feinzoll has a very unique and effective approach for business recruitment, retention, and marketing. And I don't think it's something that we don't have with the people that we have now, that expertise that I think they can offer a lot. And Feinzoll in the past did do quite a bit for the downtown area.
I understand she brought in roughly 70 to 80,000 square feet of retail tenants to Elmhurst, to our downtown. So she's got a proven track record, and she is a component that we are missing, because while Mr. Van Slyke has a role and Mr. Bartels has a role, the retail recruiting piece of the puzzle is, I think, what Ms. Maloney has, and she's got, again, she does this for other communities, and she's good at it, and she's got a proven track record here as well. And again, we got rid of 3 staff members with pension and health benefits and 401, or so we're still saving a ton of money, and we're going to get, I think, a better team. I think that's what Mr. Kopp is trying to say as well too. So to go out there and bring businesses to the marketplace for Elmhurst.
The one thing that Feinzoll too brings to the table is expertise in e-commerce, which I think is really making a big difference in today's world as far as how people are marketing and even how we can bring business into Elmhurst.
I also think we'll have flexibility too, because if for some reason one of these contractors doesn't work out, we can make a change and still have a budget item in place so that we can possibly bring another person in that gets the job done. So we got a lot of flexibility here, but being pro-recruitment and pro-sales tax generation, I think is huge right now. Alderman Healy, and I'll go to Alderman Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 points. First, in general, I like what's happening here. We're paying less in salaries and more importantly, benefits. And my math is, I round it a little bit, but when you look at the loss in salaries and benefits compared to the increase in contractual services, we come out a little bit ahead. We're spending a little less money on contractual services. And I think that's important because along with the problems down in Springfield related to the municipal portion of the income tax that we get kicked back, the pensions are what's going to kill us. And when I say us, I mean collectively municipalities. That's going to continue to increase the burden on councils next year, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years down the road, imposed on us by the state, is going to be crippling. And especially with some of the stuff they're talking about now. So the less we have to rely on pensions and full-time employees, I think we're better off. So that's point number one. Point number two is overall, I believe that we probably need to be spending more when it comes to economic development and planning if we're going to continue to say that is the partial, that's part of the way out of the hole that we're in is sales tax. And when I look at this budget, if you take the data processing out, which is roughly 39,000 more than last year because of already explained IT, the budget is less than we spent last year. So personally, I don't have an issue with this, and I like the reliance on contracted employees. Certainly understand the question about what they're doing, how they're being allocated. I don't know that I'm qualified to make those decisions, but from a high level point of view and how the money is being spent, I agree with I agree with what I'm looking at. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Alderman Morley, and I'll go to I'm sorry, Alderman Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the professional services, back to that again, for the $40,000, isn't that what City Center is already doing for us, promoting shopping in Elmhurst? I'm seeing the billboards everywhere. I think they're doing a pretty good job that way. I don't know if we need to, put $40,000 into another area, again, especially if City Center is targeting it and the Chamber is already, that is their jobs to begin with, is to promote the business in our town. And also for the consulting fees, the only one I have a problem with is the Feinzoll, because I believe she did work for City Center doing the same type of job that I believe you're going to be hiring her for. And when I spoke with City Center why they let her go, they felt she wasn't meeting their needs. So I don't see how that, us hiring her to do the same thing, is going to meet the needs of the people that let her go.
Well, I think her focus will not.
Point of order, please. Acting
Nope, official.
official, Assistant City Manager, Chief Cop. If I might, if you would indulge me just for a second, Mr. Chair, I think I can shed some light on this.
Sure.
As soon as Mr. Baum's done with his ice.
Tip's good.
I prefer to blame it on Mike. This happens every year where we're in the middle of discussing an expenditure at committee, and at some point, Marilyn and her group has to put it in the budget. So, with all due respect, and I think they're good questions, Fines All's coming up. You don't know this because we finalized our discussion tonight, but Fines All's going to be on the next council agenda, and we can go in detail about what they do and what they don't do and how they relate to City Center or not. Certainly, we're not passing this budget as a whole for another month or so. So I think they're good questions on this specific part. I know time is of the issue.
Right.
I would say let's put off the Fines All consulting discussion when I think would be more appropriate for next week.
I think it's good advice, Alderman Morley, and many of these items are in the budget, and they're yet to be agreed upon by the council. So, Alderman Shea, we okay?
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Just for the record, Mr. Mike didn't have here before he got the assistant city manager job, so this didn't happen because of the stress of our budget. So, I just had to throw a little joke out there, Mr. Cap. Maybe it'll start growing.
I doubt that. I doubt that. Next, page 122, Fire Department. Fire Department, I guess, dedicated to preservation of life and property in the city of Elmhurst. Continue to focus on training and disaster preparedness. As you know, I mean, it seems like anecdotally, as 9/11 gets farther away, it seems like a lot of people don't think of the preparedness as much as they did before. But we continue in the city of Elmhurst to meet the expectations of the residents and keep a focus on disaster preparedness. We have a disaster preparedness committee that all departments in the city are represented, and we make sure that we meet the mandates and training that we have to meet, and that we're prepared for any natural man-made disaster. So I think it's important that we continue to be prepared. We continue to focus on training. It's a big part of the fire service, big part of the fire department. We have a very nice training tower up north. We've added a confined space prop to it recently, and that allows us to meet the state and federal mandates on confined space training, not only for the fire department, we also do the training for the public works and wastewater treatment plant. In the budget, it's pretty much status quo for the most part. 4062 uniforms, you'll see a big increase in that, and that's because you applied for a grant through the Fire Act for protective clothing for the firefighters. And so if we get the grant, we'll spend the money. If we don't get the grant, we won't. We'll continue to normally we will replace 2 to 4 sets of gear on an annual basis as they need to be replaced.
Very good. Questions, anybody? Question, I know I see the line item for DUCOM, and you guys have spec'd all that out to make sure it's cheaper to outsource that versus do it in-house, and I'm sure you
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's DUCOM is
It's a no-brainer.
regional dispatch. I think there's 29 police and fire agencies being dispatched. About 70, I think it's about 70% of DuPage County is actually dispatched. The population is dispatched to DUCOM. It's a great operation, really. I mean, it's way less expensive than having our own dispatch. Yeah, we did before DUCOM. We were one of the initial entities that got into DUCOM, and that's one of the reasons we went there is we had our own dispatch, and it just the staff dispatching 24/7, 365 is really expensive, and the technology is even worse.
More expensive to keep up with as well.
Yeah.
Sure. Very good. Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mayor. One quick question, not necessarily related to the budget per se. Had the referenda up in the Bensonville Protection District, had that passed, what impact would that have had on the budget? What I'm trying to get at is I'll use the word subsidy. Are we subsidizing the fire protection up in that area, and if so, do we know how much that is?
Go ahead. Want to take it?
Give me the microphone.
He would probably do better. The city does have a contract, and the Bensville Fire Protection District pays all of what they can pay, but they're tax capped. This last city council met with that group and reported that, and put them on record, that you need to, as a district, get untax capped so you can pay your contractual obligations to the city of Elmhurst. The contract with that district provides that they collect from their service area the same dollars that the city of Elmhurst contributes for the city of Elmhurst Fire Department on a Elmhurst property taxpayer perspective. EAV to EAV, same formula. They should pay what Elmhurst residents pay. Because they're tax capped, they have not been able to do that. They're put on notice to get untax capped. They had a referendum, didn't pass. We will be reporting to the committee and then to the council on at least an Elmhurst staff recommendation of how that district could get around their tax cap if they would allow the city of Elmhurst to pass a special service area tax on that area. And in effect, they would have a special service area as opposed to a fire protection district area. The new special service area would not be tax capped. They would then be able to pay their fair share. We need to work that through with your approval, the fire protection district's approval, and DuPage County's approval. This was earlier discussed. The group said, we'd like to just have a referendum and get it passed. City Council said, you've got 180 days and a second 180 days to get it done. We don't think they're going to be able to get it done. We've got a proposal for them, which we'll be working with them and with you on going forward.
Very good. Alderman Healy, follow up?
Please, thank you for the explanation. But do we know, I mean, do we have an idea of what, it sounds to me like
they're about 50,000 short.
$50,000 annually? Thank you.
Alderman Wagner's got a hand up over here.
To the Assistant City Manager.
Gladly.
Acting.
Official.
Pardon me.
Gotta get that
Line
right.
item number 4, sick payout. Does it fluctuate that much normally?
It's due to retirements, projected retirements.
What'd you say?
No,
It's
last year we had.
10:06.
At 10:06, it's high now because of retirements. We had a long-term employee retire this year and a projection of another one to retire this year. That's why that one's so high. And then the projection of retirement in 10-11 also. There's also, there's also a number of employees that are getting to the years of service now where they also get the sick payout on an annual basis for unused sick time, 50% of your unused sick time. But the higher numbers are just because of the retirements.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
The next one's just 127, just put that page up there just so you see it. That's the wireless radio alarm services. And so now we have expenditure line items for all of that as required for the wireless alarms. And there'll be obviously a revenue side on the other side, which will be greater than the amount that we'll be projecting for the expenditure side.
Questions, anybody? Okay. So we got a revenue side of that, will surpass that and put money in our pockets, basically, is what I'm
Yes.
saying. Got it, okay.
With the payback of that original $620,000, that'll be paid back to the capital improvement fund with interest
Very good.
for the next 5 years.
Okay. Anybody else? Keep on going, Mr. Kopp. You're doing a great job.
Page 130, ESDA, Emergency Service and Disaster Agency. That's, I mean, it's pretty much status quo. And that's, we have one part-time emergency services coordinator, Battalion Chief Don Novak.
That's for our hazardous, kind of our
That's for-
hazmat.
Well, no, it's emergency services,
Yeah.
Disaster preparedness, emergency management, preparedness stuff. I mean, it's, the outdoor warning sirens are something he does. The weather watch is something that he's responsible for. The emergency operating center at Station 1, he's responsible for. And just the emergency operation plan, that's part of his responsibilities for the city, which have to be, it's a state certified plan. In fact, there's only 2 cities in DuPage County that are certified cities when it comes to ESDA. Elmhurst is one of them.
Who's the other one?
Naperville.
Okay.
I think considering our population, that speaks volumes for our department and how prepared we are. God forbid there is a disaster, so. Good. Questions,
Next,
anybody, discussion?
Any questions on ESDA? Page 132, Building Department. And, I mean, this is pretty much status quo on a lot of this. I mean, we're continuing. We have 3 vacant part-time positions right now, the plan review, building inspector, and code enforcement officer. We plan on keeping those vacant through the next year. The one thing I do want to highlight with the process, and it's not just the building department process, the new adjudication hearings that we're doing here at City Hall, and for code violations and for parking tickets. And we think it's, we've had one so far, and it worked out very well, but I think it's really going to strengthen our ability to gain compliance and code violations, which go into the district field court. We didn't have a lot of success with the judges there, so the adjudication, I think we have much more success. It's going to make the compliance, I think we'll do a lot better job on that.
Questions, anybody? Alderman Brown?
Yes, thank you. On page 132, line item 2004, being the health insurance increase, what was the rationale for the health insurance increase? Is this just a reallocation of funds from one department to another? Is it? I'm seeing nods.
Yeah, I think part of it is because of change in the formation of downstairs. You know, we consolidated the counters, and because now we've had 2 other employees that weren't in that building department before now in there, so the health insurance, that's why it went up so much more.
So it's
you know, so yeah, the two of the administrative staff that moved over from the other side are now allocated under building.
Great, thank you.
So in another department, then it'll be down, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it'll offset.
Correct.
Good questions, though. Questions. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'd like to thank Chief Kopp from his fire chief perspective on the wireless radio system and the oversight in the building department for the local adjudication. Those are 2 areas of really reinventing the way Elmhurst provides service that will result in, I think, higher quality service and a revenue increase for the city of Elmhurst. Significant effort in both areas. On the police department side, and FYI, I think we get done with the police department, we'll then move to the utility fund and do Mr. Stryker's area. Chief Neubauer.
Thank you. Okay, police department starts on page 135. Once again, we have looked at this extensively for core critical services, and we have made a few changes that will become very apparent to the public. First, as Mr. Borchert had mentioned, we have 3 school resource officers, 2 at the high school, which is unusual for any community, and felt that perhaps the officer could be best used back on the street. We are running 1 officer short right now, and we generally have 1 officer that is on light duty. Is just our history has been that there's usually somebody that's hurt or injured. So we have these gaps on the street, which make minimum staffing difficult and create overtime expenses. So we are proposing to move 1 school resource officer back on the street to fill the hole created by our 1 short officer and ongoing injuries. In order to provide the safety to the schools, we have 6 general assignment detectives, and they will be familiarized with school procedures and processes, and if there's an investigation at the school, the 6 general assignment detectives are always working the same time the schools are open, so they can be over there. And all our patrol officers will familiarize themselves again with York High School starting at the the spring break for rapid response. If there's an emergency there, we would have officers, myself included, take the training. We would be there immediately to back up the one officer at the school. So we are doing that to help cut staffing issues in the patrol division. Second thing we're doing is we're going to eliminate the animal control position. We are the only community that does trapping for people who have animals that are creating problems on their property, and those traps will be referred to private trappers. We will have an extensive public education segment with this, so if people have a problem with animals, we will be able to give them some referrals, give them some suggestions as to how they can diminish their animal problems, but this trapping situation is going to cease with the new budget. We'll still respond to lost dogs, domestic animals, things like that, animal bites, and also dangerous animals. If somebody reports a rabid animal or something that's a health hazard to the community, we will respond to those. But the trapping portion of it, which our citizens have enjoyed for many years, we just can't continue to do. So those are the two cuts that we're going to do. On the revenue side, we will shortly beginning an administrative tow policy. Administrative tows, as we've talked about in the committees, is the ability for cities to charge a cost to people who get arrested. These are violators that are going to pay this cost to help curtail some of the police costs. We don't get our staffing costs back in fines. There's so many organizations that get a piece of the fines, and the fines are controlled by the judges. We never see what it costs us to do, for instance, a DUI arrest. We never see those costs back in fines alone. So administrative tows, when we tow a vehicle for DUI, unlicensed driving, someone who's never been licensed, suspended and revoked licenses, these are people who shouldn't be driving, they're taking police community services, they will have a fine, an additional fine of $500 to get their car back from the tow. So it's going to be an extensive, little bit complicated process, but many other communities surrounding us do it. Law allows us to do it, and I think we should recoup some of our costs from those people who are causing us the services and the staff time. So we will be doing that. It shows up as a revenue of about $300,000. Once again, this is going to be difficult to estimate how many of these things we're going to do, but we will be starting them very shortly within the next month or so and see how that goes. Anybody has any questions? The rest of it's pretty status quo.
Okay. Alderman Wagner, see your hand up over here?
Yeah, just a quick question. It's kind of more of a general question. You both have, and this is for Chief Cop as well, but you both have line items for DUCOM. Yours is a little bit more extensive. Do you both negotiate separate contracts?
No. There's a way with DUCOM. There's a governing board for DUCOM that mayors, managers, and police chiefs are involved, and they have a forming fundula. Funding formula. There you go. It's late at night. A funding formula. For the police department, they assess really a head tax on sworn police officers, and that's how we figure that. Fire's done on the equalized assessed valuation of the property they protect, because with fire departments you have both city fire departments and fire protection districts, so it's a little more difficult to assess it for fire.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, Alderman Gutenkopf?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The animal control elimination is something that is going to concern a lot of people. I get a lot of phone calls from people when the skunks start mating season because they're out prowling around at night and people smell them. Did you explore the option of charging people for the animal control services? Was it part of the discussion? Was it possible that it could pay for, this program could pay for itself?
No, we didn't look at it from that aspect. We looked at it from, this is a service that people can get in the yellow pages available throughout the community. And it was just one of the aspects of how can we provide more service with less expense. So no, we did not look at that.
A quick follow-up question.
Sure, Alderman.
Will we screen service providers, do we do that for any other type of service that the city has stopped providing, or make available reference lists to people? I do get a lot of calls about skunks.
Right. I don't know that we're necessarily going to make referrals to a specific business. However, there are people in the community that we're familiar with that do this, that have done a good job. Hopefully they'll come forward and look at this as a business opportunity and do appropriate advertising and things like that.
Thank you.
Very good. Alderman Brown, I'm going to go to Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A handful of questions, Chief, if I may. The first being on page 135, the full-time staff seems to go up. Does that mean we're budgeting for one additional police officer? Is that a correct assumption?
We are not. This year's contract, the officers got a 3.5% raise, but it was only a half-year raise. The cash outlay of that was about 1.5%, keeping with Mr. Borchard's fence of spending. However, now that we have to pay for that lift, so their salaries will be 3.5% higher this year, starting off at the gate than they were last year.
Thank you. Line item 2011, and I guess this is a general comment. Could either Marilyn or the chief explain that line item in a little bit more in depth? The employer contribution, something tax?
That would be a Maryland question.
Because that seemed to go up significantly as well.
Yes, it has. It's the tax levy, the mandated tax levy for the police pension fund.
Yes.
So it has gone up.
Those are state mandated pensions that we're looking at there, which we unfortunately don't have a whole lot of control over, other than making sure that they're paid and we don't go in debt, unlike a lot of other municipalities that are behind. So we have no pension debt, from what I understand right now, which is a good policy. But again, something that's out of our control, but we are doing our best to make sure Springfield doesn't get any crazier. So, Alderman Healy, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I had one question, and then Alderman Gutenkopf's questions kind of spurred something. First, the easy question. Last year, there was a budgeted $78,000 for grants. It looks like it went unspent. $79,000 this year for grants. Just curious.
Those are placeholders. The grants show up as a revenue. That's just a placeholder, so we have some idea of what we should plan and spend. I don't think those are debited out.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we get grants,
right,
we then okay.
Right.
Thank you. And then just an idea, and along with the skunks or animal control, I mean, obviously it has been and will continue to be a big issue. Certainly understand the reasoning for not having an animal control officer in a crazy time, but is this potentially an opportunity for the city, on behalf of its residents, to work or, in effect, go out and, say, bid the rights, if you will, knowing that we can't, can't guarantee rights, but for a animal control agency, an animal control, for-profit enterprise to say, hey, we're taking bids to provide animal control services, $100 a skunk, and in exchange you get put on the city's website. We'll include you on a utility mailing. I'd have to think that kind of exposure would be worth something to these guys that do something. In exchange, we wouldn't take money from them, though maybe we could, but in exchange, we could offer our residents a reduced rate to say, normally this would cost you $200, but because of this deal we did, it's $50. And again, I'm just kind of pulling things out of midair here. But is that an opportunity for us to leverage the size?
Sort of a request for proposal for vendors?
Correct.
Right. That's something we could certainly look at.
I mean, leverage the size of the city and then give, whether it's website, little flyers and utility bills. I have to think that's worth something.
Yeah, we sort of do that with the RPZ testing right now. We go out for one vendor, we get a much better price, and we know who the vendor is doing the test on the RPZ valves for businesses.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman. One thing I want to add before we go on to Mr. Stryker, which we got to do pretty soon here because of time. My one concern is the going from 2 police liaisons at York High School to 1, and given the situation we've had over there with an influx of narcotics, although it seems to be somewhat under control, my concern is that do we want to pull somebody out at this time? I'd feel horrible if we didn't hit. Mr. O'Connell, who's a Naperville police liaison, told me keep your ratios as low as you can, Pete, because if you spread these guys too thin, we may have a challenge. I had heard a number that we had like 10 kids on rehab at York. Naperville lost 2 kids to death. So those are concerns that I have as a mayor, with also a daughter entering York next year, is that we keep our staffing as high as we can, and we address the problems as we have been, but pulling somebody out of there, is that the right thing to do, to put them on the street to write traffic tickets? Those are concerns I have as a mayor and as a father, so just thought I'd mention that as well.
No, I understand, and we have seen crime and calls for service had been going down, but now we're seeing a whipsaw effect with the economy. And January, February this year, our calls for service have gone up 14%. And I just got the unofficial numbers. My record supervisor cautioned me. These aren't certified numbers by the state yet, but index crimes, which are felonies, we had 650, I believe, in 2008. 2009, it went to 764. So we're seeing that effect on the street. This animal control school resource officer, I do these things with great trepidation. However, I think for the schools we have a pretty good backup plan that we're going to have. The school liaison officer will not be by himself. He will have other general assignment detectives to help him as need be. And also the middle school resource officer is also a backup. So we can always move the chess pieces around if we have to as the year goes on, but the plan is to start this way.
Okay. All right. And with that, Mr. Stryker, maybe we get to Mr. Stryker's part of the meeting here. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
As Dennis is coming forward, we have actually Assistant Manager Kopp has worked with Mike Hughes and myself and Dennis Stryker to roll forward a succession plan as Dennis's retirement is unfortunately becoming closer and closer. We're very pleased with that plan. Dennis will provide an overview of that as well as the rest of the utility fund, the highlights and then changes.
Thank you. Our municipal utility is, if you watch the budget, is struggling with a couple of things. We're trying to keep our O&M budget as flat as possible, the day-to-day costs, but if you look, you'll see that there's a gradual increase in infrastructure due to the aging system that we have. So some of the capital costs that you'll see are going up over the next several years. Budget summary has many of the details in there of our accomplishments and goals. I'd like to just highlight a few that I think are pretty good. The city's installation of the radio reading automatic system for water billing is proceeding on schedule, and I think that's going to be a major help for our utility billing systems. We painted our our south elevated tank with the west elevated tank scheduled for next. This is the interior wet portion of that tank. Utilities Division of Public Works cleaned and televised over 120,000 feet of sewer in the last year, 23 miles altogether, and that's an important program to maintain and improve upon as we move forward. City overhead sewer program has also been challenged quite a bit in the last 2 years. This last year we installed 6 overhead sewers in private residences that are at risk for flooding, on top of a number of others the previous fiscal year. At the wastewater treatment plant, we successfully installed a number of the ceramic diffusers. I think we're going to see some significant energy savings at the plant as we move forward, estimating about $120,000 per year electrical savings as a result of those new technology. We also readjusted or redeployed staff at the wastewater plant and are now staffed on a 12-hour on, 12-hour off schedule, which has saved significantly in overtime and holiday pay, and had made much better use of the staff that we have available there. We are in the midst of and about to be finished with replacing about 80% of the phone lines. We use about 40 phone lines at the plant for telemetry and SCADA, and we're upgrading all those to radio telemetry that we will own and maintain, with also savings estimating about $2,000 a month in that cost. This past year, we began on the design of our additional anaerobic digester. Had to get this in before Mr. Borchard likes to talk about anaerobic digesters. That design is proceeding on time, on pace, and hoping to have a bid available later this calendar year or very early in 2011. Our goals next year are to complete, and I'm speaking a little bit for Mr. O'Donovan here behind me, but to complete the city. I'm sorry, this is Roderick O'Donovan. Rod is moving into a position of the manager of the Water Wastewater Division of Public Works. Public Works and the Water Wastewater Department are now going to be re-merging into a single department with the Public Works Director, Mike Hughes, in charge. Rod is working on a very detailed GPS survey of the sanitary sewer manholes throughout the town. I think this is something I'm kind of happy to see get done finally, to update the city sewer atlas and connect the dots correctly. We're also going to continue the cleaning and televising of the sanitary sewer that I mentioned earlier, as well as finish those radio reads on the water metering. And lastly, I guess I'd just say, following up on what the city manager had started out with, was we've been working for the past several months in a transition mode as Rod was identified to move into this role. City manager, and I know the assistant city manager had very keenly been watching to be sure that there was a seamless transition as we moved along. It's been a great experience for me, and I'll tell you something, I thought about this the other day because the museum is looking at an exhibit later this year on City of Elmhurst infrastructure and how it came to be what it is and so on. And it occurred to me that our wastewater plant is celebrating, if you call it that, its centennial year this year. The first facility was there in 1910, and 100 years later we have what we have today. I've been proud to be a part of that process. I manage a process at the plant, and for those of you who have toured the place, it's a process from step to step, and I've been just part of that process, and I'm just very happy to have been there. So, if you have any questions on the budget, I'd be willing to answer those if I could.
Any questions? Before we go to questions, we're happy to have had you for so many years, and we appreciate all your hard work, and we've got a model water treatment center over there because of you, so we appreciate all your hard work.
And can we get a sign-off to use your picture in the exhibit?
We'll see. It's a good picture.
Discussion questions?
Where, when it opened? No, I wasn't here when it opened.
That didn't come from me.
Alderman Morley.
Again, for those who would not intuitively understand it, but the utility fund is not part of the property tax bill. It's part of your sewer and water bill, part of the sewer and water rates. It's a different funding source. Finance Committee has offered up recommendations on making adjustments in sewer and water rates. We do that on an annual basis. So it's a different revenue source that finances the utility fund.
Very good clarification for everybody that doesn't know that. Alderman Morley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dennis, I have a question for you. You had mentioned that you had shifted to a 12-hour workday, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. And I know Tom Borchard has mentioned in the past, combining departments and a reduction in staff. And you said, Dennis, that there was a noted benefit in reducing, I think, was it the overtime? And I'm trying to identify that here in the budget.
And particularly, what page are you looking at? And
that's what I'm asking you.
Okay, I'm sorry. It would be the 6057 account, and it would be on page 237. 6057,
237?
502, 1001, page 237.
Right here.
And what's the number?
That's the very first line there, the 1001.
Do you agree with that?
Okay. The benefit of the 12 hours on, 12 hours off has been achieved because we've had such a good success with the computer control system that we have in place. That control system monitors pretty much every aspect of the department, allowing alarms or failures or other changes in conditions that we need to respond to literally call the on-call person on a cell phone. That person can be at home, can be anywhere, and can respond to the cell phone and actually get a detailed description of the alarm and respond to the alarm either through the phone or by making the decision then to come in as appropriate.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Alderman Nybo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 226, and have we had this discussion, and I defer to Alderman Hipps, New York on this, have we ever talked about the water commission rate increases?
It's in committee right now. It's coming up.
It's coming up?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's probably worth an observation, and can we just have an explanation as to, it's like, well, I'm looking at the J, Alderman Green, what do you call this one?
J form?
The J form is the acronym. It's described on page 226. It's 510, 6051, 501.3020. Can we just get a brief summary as to what's going on in this line item?
20% increase from the DuPage Water Commission.
There's been a recent situation with DuPage Water Commission that they found themselves, that their reserves were spent below what they thought they were, and that caused their board to approve a 20% plus increase to all the participating municipalities in DuPage Water Commission. So that total 20% increase has been passed along to the municipality. So that's a very significant increase in our water system.
I've never been fantastic with numbers, but I mean, I'm looking at almost $2 million in last year, and what we're estimating, if I'm reading this correct, is almost $3 million. I mean, to me, that seems more than a 20% increase, unless I'm got my numbers.
Actually, it was a series of increases. This is almost purely passed through, and it's something we've been. This is number 3 increase, and boy, I forget what the increments were, but we've been dealing with this for it's 3 mandated increases coming from the water, and they're directly correlate to the price.
I understand that it's
and we've been
the pension obligations is something that we have no control over, except that you might understand that within 1 year, it's essentially like a 33% increase in total. About $2 million.
Actually, there was a total of 3. I don't know what they are offhand. It's greater than that.
I don't understand.
And it's really a pass-through. We're on round 2 of pass-through. And then the 3 increases came in less than a 24-month period. But, Marilyn, do you remember?
Yeah, and my numbers are actually $2 million to about $3 million is actually a 50% increase.
Yes. You bring up a good point, Alderman Nybo, and I cannot answer that right this moment, but be happy to come back at the next meeting.
I don't think it's worth. I think it's just worth spending just an extra minute of attention on what's going on here with the Water Commission.
Yes, and I think also in this number there could be some volume changes. There's some other things going on, perhaps, that I just don't have the total background of the computation of our estimate.
By no means to be critical of what the Finance Committee is doing. It's just an observation of what's going on over at the Water Commission.
Right.
Oh, I certainly don't take that way. As a matter of fact, it's a great observation, and I'm glad you brought it up because this is purely, You brought up the pension obligations. This is almost the exact same thing. The commission, they tell us what they're going to increase it at. They had 3 increases in a row, and they were like, 19%, 21%, and 23. I forget the numbers. I actually have them in the car because we just went over it the other night, and I can share those with you. But they were just mandated on us. It's passed through, and we just, you hate to be at the mercy of a commission just saying, here you go. And then the articles come out about the mismanagement and all the other things. We're like, wait, so it's you and me and the citizens of Elmhurst and the citizens across DuPage County that are going to pay for this mismanagement, which is one part of it. The other part is the increase in the water from Cook County, because it's the Lake Michigan Water is that it? The Lake Michigan Water Commission? I forget the exact name.
It's the city of Chicago.
Yeah, and it's just mandated right to us.
Decides what it wants to charge on its end.
Yeah, the city of Chicago that's the commission buys from the city of Chicago, the Lake Michigan Water, and that's who would set our rates. But Chicago cannot charge the commission any greater than they charge their own customers, being their own residents. So that sort of keeps things in balance.
The increase from the Water Commission is a result of the reserves being down. There was no misuse of those funds. They just spent down their reserves faster than they thought they were. They need to now reverse that. So to reverse that, they're increasing their fees to their customers. Elmhurst needs to adjust its fees so that if the city of Elmhurst buys a gallon of water from the Water Commission, we make sure that we release it to the city's customers at the appropriate rate so the city isn't losing money.
One final observation. I mean, we always talk about, and we hear stories about people, pulling out their property tax bills and saying, can you believe what's going on with our property tax bills? I think this year we're going to have people coming in here with their water bills saying, what's going on with my water bill? So it's worth spending some time figuring out, making sure we all understand what's happening here.
Alderman Pezza.
Well, thanks. Actually, I agree with Alderman Nybo. Today, I put in a call to a county board representative because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I was told that the DuPage Water Commission raised it 17%. I guess I'm a little confused, though. Are we increasing it above and beyond the commission's 17%?
The Elmhurst rate is proposed to go up 15%.
And it's not a direct correlation. The formulas and the way we've had the multiple increases cannot, if they say 17%, that doesn't mean we go up 17%.
No, my point is their fee is going up 17%.
It's 20%. I don't know who told you 17%. Okay. We know it's 20%. Okay. And 20% on their number it's a smaller number, so it's a smaller amount. 15% on the city of Elmhurst number, being a larger number, will cover the DuPage Water Commission's increase.
So is it a fee increase or is it a tax? How is it?
It's a rate increase.
A rate increase,
right.
Okay,
not a tax. It's a rate. So if you don't use the water, we believe that there's a significant increase on this line as a result of last year being more of a wet year than a dry year and not a lot of water sprinkling, so there was not a lot of water consumption. We would anticipate a more normal summer coming. If we have a more normal summer, there's more outside water sprinkling, more outside water use, more Elmhurst purchasing of DuPage Water Commission water at the higher rate. The Finance Committee is making sure with its recommendation that if Elmhurst is buying water from the Water Commission, we're selling it at a more than break-even number to help pay for the city's maintenance of the water distribution system. But it's all on water consumption going through the water meter for water customers. There's no tax involved.
I recall at one point there was like a huge surplus that was given back to all the communities and all that. What is the fund balance, and how can these funds be used? Can they be used anywhere, or just for specific items in this?
There was a large DuPage Water Commission fund balance, and as a result of that, the Water Commission actually did provide some rate relief to cities and villages going back 6-7 years ago. You may recall, because there was such a significant fund balance in the DuPage Water Commission, the county requested a $15 million payment from the Water Commission to the county. I'm not exactly sure how you justify that. A lot of newspaper articles about that. That was $15 million for 5 years, $75 million takeaway from the Water Commission to the county. That's not the most recent issue. That was not anything to do with mismanagement by the Water Commission. That was DuPage County that took those dollars from the Water Commission. What occurred recently was a lot of capital investing, capital infrastructure work done by the Water Commission, and there was rather poor financial accounting and errors made, and the fund balance was spent to lower levels than what they anticipated. Actually, a past Water Commission employee was brought in to replace a staff person who was on extended leave, and that employee identified the
clerical error?
The accounting errors and reported it through the process, and the Water Commission is again done a special audit of those expenditures and accounts and determined that it was arithmetic errors, not spending that was inappropriate. But because the fund balance is now less than where it needs to be, they need to make an adjustment, not unlike what the city of Elmhurst is doing. For different reasons, our fund balance is low. We're attempting to increase that fund balance. The DuPage Water Commission is attempting to increase its fund balance.
And it should be mentioned that while times were real good, didn't we refund money back one year, Marilyn, about 5 years ago? We took I know we did.
We were able to delay otherwise anticipated rate increases because there was a deferred rate increase from the Water Commission.
Yeah. So while the whole commission had money, the Elmhurst residents benefited from that surplus. So it was a good thing.
So I guess is that an answer to my question? If there is a surplus, let's say 5 years from now, in this fund, how can we use that fund is the question.
This is Elmhurst's own utility fund, so this is the water pipes under the ground, the fire hydrants, the sanitary sewers under the ground, to the wastewater treatment plant, and everything at the wastewater treatment plant. So and the Finance Committee with the finance staff looks at the water rates, sewer rates, looks at the operating budget and the capital budget to manage those rates, to balance capital needs going forward and operating needs going forward, and understanding there is an opportunity for the City Council to allow the capital improvement fund dollars to help the utility fund from time to time as well. So if there is very, very good news and the fund balance is stronger than what's anticipated, what it allows is future rate increases to be deferred or lessened. But Elmhurst you are in charge of those funds.
Very good.
Thanks,
Kennedy?
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Stryker, you made a comment about a significant cost savings related to electricity. Where would I see that in the pages here?
Be again in the 6057 electricity, and be
what page?
I'm looking for the page here. It's line 237 again. and it's the 3024 line.
Okay. I see the electricity, we're on page 227 again, right?
237.
237, excuse me.
Yeah, I know. We're seeing a estimated decrease for this year. There are projected increases. I think these are anticipating, looking forward always, that there will be some cost increases for electricity. I'm happy to say those will be less than what we would have done on the first case because of the infrastructure improvements at the wastewater plant. I think you may also look forward to, we've got a very competitive rate on electricity that we've negotiated this year. It'll be effective throughout 2010. It's almost a 16% reduction in the power cost. That's not, doesn't include the distribution and other ancillary fees.
And you said the savings was about 120,000, is that right?
Going forward, we're estimating about $120,000 a year for electrical savings and with use of the new diffusers.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Anything else, anybody? Mr. Stryker, you wrapping it up, or you okay?
I'm fine.
Okay, anybody else with discussion? We're a little bit past the time we were hoping to be at, but I think we could probably end this here shortly and continue. We'll be continuing this every week.
Yeah, it would be the staff's recommendation that if the city council meeting concludes, we'll have staff prepared to go on to what's next and to allow for a 10 o'clock or so work effort.
Sure.
Following a council meeting. We need to get done with the budget review before the end of April, and it's been past practice that if we utilize the latter part of every Monday night, Monday after committee meetings, Monday after council meetings, got a pretty good chance of getting done with that. And if, I think there's a fifth Monday, although that's spring break Monday, maybe we'll be able to take that Monday off. Your call. If we're not making progress, need to work another evening or work a Saturday, make those observations, and we'll respond.
Sounds good. We'll make it work.
Got two announcements.
Sure.
Just look at the police department's press release. Pay attention to that. The police department has a DUI enforcement grant and an enforcement campaign, and for everybody's safety, there is going to be extra patrols by the police department and roadside safety checks over the next couple of weeks, particularly around this high celebration time. So be careful. And we did provide the Elmhurst notes relative to the state governor's musing as to adjusting the state income tax distribution at the expense of cities and villages, so you can understand the negative impact on Elmhurst. And imagine the negative impact on Chicago, which is the significant opportunity cities and villages have when Chicago is so large that if this were to occur, the city of Chicago would be in incredible difficulty, as would Elmhurst, but
Absolutely.
proportional.
And
Parades on Saturday. Again, it's a lot of planning going in.
we got the pedicabs running yet, or no? No? Pretty soon?
It won't be run.
Okay, just checking.
So I know you're assembling for we'll put a note in the packet on Thursday for those participating in the parade on Saturday. It's a fun time in Elmhurst.
Absolutely, absolutely. St. Patty's Day, I believe it's a noon parade, and we've got a lot of participants. Are expecting almost 30,000 people. I talked to Jim O'Connor earlier today, so be a big day for Elmhurst, big day for the Irish, even the half Irish like myself. So
Even if you're not Irish.
even if you're not Irish, come out and enjoy. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Alderman Braham, Alderman Morley, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? We're adjourned.